3 years ago, as we were preparing for our December 7th Prevention on Purpose first meeting, we were around the mastermind group, and we were attempting to come up, trying to come up with some type of tagline that would make sense. And one of the mastermind participants, our next speaker, Michelle, said, "Why not healthy families, healthy futures?" And we go, "Whoa, that has a nice sound to it." So we put it in. And then last year we said, "Okay, what's our theme going to be this year?" I said, "We don't need another theme at all." It describes it. And it's so powerful. Yesterday, Chris and I were at Avila doing a little comparison, and this popped off of the screen to me. It said, "Healthy families, healthy futures." If you break the word H-E-A-L, heal thy families, heal thy future. How fun is that? So it's kind of neat. And this next speaker is the one to be credited for that. And Michelle is a Central Coast-based integrative health coach and corporate wellness speaker. And it was her frustration with Western medical doctors in solving her own digestive issues that led her down this holistic path. She's going to help us really learn how to read labels. Let's give a big welcome to Michelle. Sala. Michelle.
We've been hearing a lot about toxins today, haven't we? And it's a reoccurring theme. And our toxic environment is really the biggest contributor to the rising rate of sickness and disease that we're experiencing right now. And we're finding that the toxicity is coming from the food that we eat and the medication we're taking, vaccines, and also the personal care products we're putting on our skin. And today I'm going to help you identify what these ingredients are in our food and our personal care products. Now it doesn't have to be all gloom and doom. And that is the whole purpose of Prevention on Purpose, is to help create change and to change the course. And consumers are starting to demand to know what's in their food. And states like Vermont, Maine, and Connecticut actually passed legislation requiring food companies to identify GMOs in their food. But the food companies, the big food companies with billions of dollars, were able to convince Congress to enact other legislation that overrode that state legislation. And in 2015, they came up with the HR 1599, and it was called the Safe and Accurate Food Labeling Law. But it couldn't have been farther from the truth, because the law had nothing to do with GMOs being safe or food being safe. It was only meant to obscure what was actually in the food. And what they came up with is, instead of actually putting genetically modified on the label, the food companies only have to use this QR code, which is that funny looking black and white code on the bottom. And that's all they're going to have to put on their label. So what does that mean? That means we have to take our smartphone out, we have to scan it, which will take us to a website and then actually tell us what's in our food. All because they're concerned about losing profits. Now, there are some responsible companies out there, and there's this non-GMO project, and food manufacturers can be certified to prove that none of their ingredients are genetically modified, and then they can put this label on their food. Now, that doesn't mean that other food that doesn't have this non-GMO project isn't safe. Some very small food companies just aren't going to be able to afford to do the certification. But at least it's a start. So let's start by reading a label. And most of us are familiar, or all of us are familiar with this label, which food manufacturers were required to put on their food beginning in 1994. And the government thought this was a smart idea because of the increase of diabetes and heart disease and obesity. So they required food manufacturers to put on this label. So at the very top of the nutrition facts label, we've got the size of the serving and how many servings are in the package. And then we've got the calories, which I think a lot of people immediately go and look at how many calories are in the food. But a lot of us would agree that a calorie is not just a calorie. Then we've got fat, which I'm guessing became the bad boy back about 4 decades ago when it was blamed for heart disease and obesity. And now new research is coming out that's showing that fat is not the bad guy. However, I want to point out trans fats, because food manufacturers don't have to admit that there are trans fats in a serving if it's less than 0.5 grams. So let's take a bag of chips or crackers that has 18 servings in it. If the one serving, and we all know nobody just eats one serving of something, if that one serving has 0.45 grams, then they get to round down to 0. In reality, 18 servings is over 8 grams of trans fats. And the reason why we care about that, because all trans fats are bad. It's very inflammatory. So let's move down. I have sugar circled, because sugar really is the bad boy. Sugar is the main cause of heart disease, the main cause of obesity, the main cause of diabetes. So sugar is really something that we need to be aware of. And I want you to keep in mind this number 18 grams. We're going to talk about it on the next slide, but just keep that in the back of your mind. Then the label has the recommended dietary allowances for certain micronutrients, vitamins and minerals. And then on the right side here, we've got the list of ingredients. And the ingredients are listed in order of quantity by weight. And here we've got sugar as the second ingredient. So that's the second most quantity of this yogurt here, which is a very popular item. Now, if you look at the front of the package here, my pointer is very tiny, they have reduced, they're bragging that they reduced the amount of sugar by 25% from the previous formula. I have carmine here circled in yellow because carmine is a coloring that comes from the shells of a type of beetle. Now, some people might call it natural, but I'll leave that up to you to decide if you want your yogurt to be colored by the shells of a beetle. Now, I have to give General Mills credit here because they actually voluntarily point out that it's produced with genetic engineering. But which ingredient is genetically engineered? Well, typically, sugar beets are genetically engineered. If a company uses sugar cane or cane sugar in their formula, then that is not a genetically modified type of sugar. So just that it says sugar here and they're admitting something is genetically modified, then it's going to be the sugar that is genetically modified in this list. Okay, so I asked you to remember the 18 grams of sugar. But the number that I really want you to remember is the number 4, because there's 4 grams of sugar in a teaspoon. So if we take that 18 grams of sugar that's in that yogurt and we divide it by 4, there's 4.5 teaspoons in the yogurt. 4.5, just picture 4.5 teaspoons. Would you put 4.5 teaspoons in your oatmeal? Would you put 4.5 teaspoons in your cup of coffee? Would you put 4.5 teaspoons on your cereal? When you picture the actual amount of sugar like that, it's going to make you think twice before you eat it. So all you need to remember is 4, and when you see the grams of sugar, you divide it by 4. And some of the biggest offenders of sugar-laden foods are beverages. And we are brainwashed to think things like vitamin water is healthy for us, but that has 8 teaspoons of sugar in it. And the 20-ounce Mountain Dew, which is now the standard size bottle, has over 19 teaspoons of sugar. So if you can remember the 4 and divide it, you will be making different choices. And that's why whenever I look at a label, the first thing I look at is how much sugar is in it. Now, the other thing that we need to be concerned about are personal care products. And Jordan, like Jordan had mentioned, now his numbers are a little bit different than mine, but they're close. The FDA has not passed any legislation or bans on any ingredients since 1938 until a week ago when it partially banned triclosan. Now, triclosan is an antibacterial that you will find in hand soaps and other antibacterial products. But for this partial ban, it's only in the hand soap that it's being banned. So you'll still find it in some acne medication. It's actually in Colgate Total Control toothpaste. If anybody is using that kind of toothpaste, you really need to stop, because triclosan, not only does it contribute to antibiotic resistance, but it also kills the good bacteria in your gut, which leads to leaky gut, which a couple of the speakers has mentioned today. And it's just bad news. You don't want any product that uses triclosan in it. The EU, the European Union, bans over 1,200 ingredients. What do they know that we are not willing to accept? And you're probably wondering why the FDA allows so many unsafe ingredients. It's because they have companies do their own research. And they tell the company to do their research and come back to us and show us what it comes back as. So as long as people aren't immediately dying when they are applying a product or their skin isn't burning off, they don't care about the slow, toxic buildup that we're getting. Our skin is the largest organ of our body, and it only takes 36 seconds for a chemical to absorb from your skin into your bloodstream. So what do? It doesn't have to be all doom and gloom. We need to start doing our own research. And one of the best places that I found is the Environmental Working Group. You can find it at ewg.org. And they have all kinds of databases for cleaning supplies, personal care products. The Skin Deep database is an app you could put on your smartphone. And when you go out shopping and you're looking for shampoo or lotion, you can scan the item. They have over 20,000 items in their database, and you could decide for yourself if that item is safe. Every year they publish a Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen list. This is a list of produce that is grown conventionally, and they tell you how safe or not safe it is. So there's certain things like bananas and avocados that have a hard peel that you would peel off and you would never eat. Those tend to be safe to buy conventional. And then there are other things that are on the Dirty Dozen list, like strawberries, apples, peaches, lettuce, celery, things you would never want to buy conventionally. So this Clean 15 really helps you to budget your grocery dollars and spend them as wisely as possible. So I hope I've inspired you to really look closer at the things you're eating and the products you're putting on your skin. It really takes work to evaluate our products, but in order to change the course of things, we're going to have to do this. And when we stop buying the toxic-laden personal products and the toxic food, companies will stop producing them. It only takes a 6% change in buying habits for a company to take notice. So I challenge you all, and I hope that you're inspired to make a difference. Thank you.
Our next speaker